Hi, it's Rebecca Happy here with Ottawa Buzz TV, and I'm here just to introduce you today to Diane Valiquette of the Relationship Show. You've been watching her show for the past month or so. She's talking about how to be centered in yourself first as you enter into relationships, or you navigate some separation and divorce and many different things. And today, she's going to be talking about the stories we tell ourselves that are sometimes not in integrity either to ourselves or those in front of us. Welcome to Diane Valiquette, the relationship coach. Thank you so much for taking the show, Diane.
Thanks, Rebecca. So glad to be back. I hear that, I listened to Catherine Corey, my colleague, and she did a pretty amazing job last week. So good for her. Today, I want to talk to you guys about, the stories we tell ourselves, and how we justify them and how we lie to ourselves and all that kind of stuff. So, I had not, I had not taken a vacation, I think, in about 2.5 years, 3 years, like to really actually check out and go away, which I did last week. And that's why I wasn't there on Monday. And interestingly enough, I was able to really watch myself and listen to myself about all the stories I had about why I can't go on vacation and why I can't leave that long because there's always stuff happening in the office. And so I, basically held myself a slave to my practice and to my office and to everything that's happening. And until you detach and you actually take time for self and you sit there and you realize, I haven't done nothing for myself in 3 years. And here I am, trying to get people to be the best version of themselves and really learn how to take care of themselves coming out of a separation, a divorce, and just globally take care of yourself. And it really came down to the fact that, I didn't feel important or valued enough, or myself, my being, to take time to recharge and to regroup and to recenter. So I think, people, and especially separated and divorced people, because we're so used to doing everything ourselves and bringing up our children and, taking care of everything, that you just don't realize that, you need to unplug in order to even be that much better. Right. So hence, taking care of myself, and it felt really good. And I came back with, a whole different game plan on committing to being the best version of myself, because if I'm going to, tell people to be that, I absolutely need to do it myself. And then something else really interesting happened. We were about 4 or 5 people traveling alone. And so the last night or the second last night, we decided we're all going to sit down and have dinner together and chat. And as we're chatting and everybody's saying, their life stories or where they're at and so on. So this woman beside me says, I've been very happily married for the past 10 years and, things are great. And, I waited till I was 39 before I got married. And we both decided that we didn't want kids. And she goes, well, he decided that he didn't want kids. So I made peace with it. And I guess we never got children. So then I started kind of poking a little bit and saying, did you really not ever want to have kids? And she says, well, I needed to not want to have children because in order to be married with him or have a relationship with him, I had to, give up on having children. And I was just like, what? That's so sad. That is so sad. And she says, like, why? I mean, we're happy and we're good. And I said, are you really? Like, let me ask you, like, are you really? And it's interesting because her eyes came full of water. And she says, she says, I really wish I would have had a child. And I really wish that I would have had a child with him. And I said, it's sad to think that what you wanted didn't matter, but you had to, and I'm going to use that word, and I use it a lot, not to be bold or, but, to make a kind of a shock factor is to prostitute a need or a desire to have a family, to have a child, and you prostituted that away in order to be with that guy and to be with, to marry this guy who then, took a big part of you away. And then I found myself saying, okay, I'm blaming him, but actually it's not him. He was pretty straight and he was pretty, forward and said, yes, I love you. And yes, I would like to marry you, but I will never have children. And so because she didn't want to be alone, said, well, I don't want to have children either. And yet, 10 years later, it's going to start haunting her. And then, she then opened up a little bit more and a little bit more and said, well, there's many parts of me that resents him when he does this or he does that. And so, of course, me being me, I pried a little bit more. And at the bottom, it wasn't, she's making up stories about some of the things that he does or that bugs her. And really at the root of that story is that she gave up having a child. And so now she's kind of building a case, kind of, I'm going to call it, against him because she's resentful. And yet the resentment and the things that bug her about him are just a way to look into the relationship to make him wrong because of a choice that she made. And so many people do that. So many people don't even realize that they made a choice and they let go of something, or they're not standing, what I call, in your own power. And you allow things to happen in relationships, or you allow things to happen, even when you give too much to your children, or you're giving too much, for me, like at the business, and you're giving. And we lose sight of, we lose sight, or we don't even know, who am I and what is my true needs? What are my true needs? What are my true values? And what work can I do in order to really stand firm and never prostitute those away? Because, it'll come back and haunt you. You cannot, in life, say like something that you really wanted and say, you know what, that's fine. I'm just going to give it up in order to have you. That doesn't work, because years go by, and then, hence what I just said, you build, little blocks of resentment, which then you start to fight and bicker at each other. And all along, it doesn't have anything to do with his laundry being on the floor, or him coming home late, or, her going to travel by herself and him being a little bit resentful about that. It has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with the choice that she made, to give up children versus to have him. And now she's going to destroy the relationship she has with him on a choice that she made, right? Rebecca, any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question with that. So I know this was just sort of like a dinner conversation with you kind of probing this person and that, but that's a real situation. Yeah. And I'm sure there are people that come into your office with that. Is there any way of salvaging this, like for her to sort of become aware and sort of make amends with herself for having done that? Because it's already too late for her, but it's not necessarily too late to salvage this relationship if there was anything there left, or did she ruin it just from the get-go?
Yeah, well, that's what I shared with her. So, it was interesting because me being me, I was kind of like prying a bit. And then I said to her, okay, so, if you're interested, I'm going to be still here tomorrow. If you want to have a real conversation about what you're sharing right now, that I don't think I want to have with everybody sitting at the table, or I can if you're okay with it. But if you want to just talk to me alone, I'll meet you for breakfast, or I'll meet you for lunch. And she said, I'd really like to meet you for breakfast. So we met for breakfast, and that's exactly what I said to her, Rebecca. I said, that's not his fault. And until you come to a place, you need to go get some help. Or, I gave her homework of journaling the fact that she is the one that chose not to have children in order to be with him. So she was trying to blame him that he took something away from her. And so I was able to say, no, you can't blame him. You're trying to build a case, and you're going to lose this man or your marriage on something that you decided. So you can't make him feel guilty, or you are finding things wrong with him, or you're, going to sabotage your marriage because of a choice you made. So I suggested that she goes and gets help with really grieving that she didn't have children, and grieving the fact that she made, having this man more important than her need to have children. But to blaming it on him and to make him wrong is only going to destroy her marriage as well. And so she was grateful, and she was saying, you're right. It's about me reconciling the fact that I gave that up in order to have him. And I'm like, and you need to go do some grief work around it, and you need to go heal that piece of you. But I mean, he can't heal it for you. And he will be resentful or angry too if you say, it's your fault that I didn't have kids. No, it's not his fault. It is actually not his fault. It is your fault that you gave up and prostituted a need that you had. And now 10 years later, you want to bring it up. That's not fair. So she was grateful. And she said, it's really interesting. I gained like about 40 pounds and, in the past couple of years. And I'm like, well, I also want, make you understand that those 40 pounds have to do with you not liking you being kind of angry at yourself, and you being so in the prostitution phase of your life that you are making yourself not attractive and not desirable and all of those things, because you're not feeling desirable for self because it gave up something that was really big and really important to you. And she's like, oh my God, I never thought that they were all correlated. And I'm like, they're always correlated. You don't make yourself, or you don't gain that much weight, or you don't get to that place just from eating. You get to that place from, sabotaging, from not wanting to be attractive, to protecting yourself, to being kind of in a depressed state because of what you're going through inside. And I was able to make all the correlations for her to understand that she actually needs to go get some emotional help on grieving the no child thing. And I said to her, you know what, once you heal that and you grieve the fact that you are the one that allowed this, and I bet you $20 you'll be back at the gym and you'll lose weight and life's going to be easy again, because you're going to gain or reconnect with that part of you that you allowed to die, right? You're going to wake it up and you're going to say, hey, you made those choices, grieve it, make amends to it. And that's about it, right? But really understanding that they're all correlated together. Does that answer your question, Rebecca?
Yeah, that's amazing. She's really lucky that she landed up in the same vacation spot as you.
Yeah, I know. I know. She was crying and she was like, I've never talked to anybody and told anybody of all of this, right? And she goes, and then you can just figure it out. And I'm like, it's not like, I say, that I can just figure it out. But I mean, I've done the same thing, right? I was in a relationship that was really unhealthy, and I gained weight, and I was in the hospital all the time, and I had all these bobos. And the minute, the year, 3 months after he left, I started to lose weight. And I just haven't been in the hospital once in the 4 years that we've been separated, right? And I had all these freakish things happen to me, like a gland swell up or an infection and just like tons of stuff. And it's because you're rejecting yourself. You're rejecting everything about you. Yeah. I think it's really important, right? So if you're in a place where you're feeling depressed or you're feeling your relationship is not okay, well, check in with yourself first. And check in with what you're giving up of yourself. And before you blame someone else, take a good look at yourself.
So, like, I know she was you were off somewhere else and she's not locally here, but would you ever help? Would you ever be in a situation to help a person like that, or you really have to be in the same town to be able to help somebody?
No, I said the same thing to her. I said, listen, if you can't process this with, you don't find a therapist that's close to you or whatever, I can do it, on Skype or whatever, on Zoom. And of course I can do it, right? I can make her get through the place of reconciling. Now that's not my specialty, like going into, that depressed state. Mm-hmm. But I mean, can I do coaching online, and can I do, help just divorce recovery and all that kind of stuff on a Zoom or Skype? For sure I can.
Yeah. But yeah. It would, so like, I know you're, you run your rebuilding class throughout the year, and that the last one for the year until the summer, the summer break happens is on now. And, So if people, the best thing, the way that you prefer working with people is for them to actually do the 12-week intensive program in the group format, right?
Yeah. And a reason for that, Rebecca, is, and I was saying that to her as well. I said, therapy, and I mean, I believe in therapy for many, many things, but when it comes to relationship issues like relationships or going through a separation, a divorce, first of all, we want to understand what happened. We want to understand what happened. We want to be in a place where we're not going to choose the same people over and over. And for me, it's really big to educate people. So, when I was talking with her, I was not therapying her. I was just educating her on what I saw and what I see happen all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm really big on educating and processing. Right. And then in a group setting, it's great because people are asking the questions that you want to ask, but you don't really want to ask because you're too shy, or people are sharing and it's like, oh my God, that's me. So it makes you feel not so alone. Mm-hmm. And when you're going through, a relationship breakdown or separation or you're coming out of your second marriage or your second relationship, it's hard to just go do therapy one-on-one because you don't have a community, you don't have a group of people. And that's why I do the 12 weeks, is so that you're not sitting all by yourself and thinking, this just happens to me, right? Or I'm the only person that feels that way, and that's why I'm so big on a 12-week course. And I'm also like the 12-week course because it gives consistency and time for you to get a muscle. So by the time I'm done the 12 weeks, you're standing in a really good place of self.
Right. Yeah, so that's great. And thank you so much for telling us about that today. I mean, I think that's, really lucky for her to have encountered you. And I think your message is really important. So in next week's session, what will we be covering? So what can people expect when they show up to listen?
I want to, next week, I'm going to talk about alienation. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to explain how alienation happens and how it works and all the dynamics. Because right now we have a case that's really happening, and I'm going to share because maybe people out there can recognize themselves and maybe stop doing it. Just maybe.
You mean where we alienate other, or we become
our children? When we alienate our children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really big right now. Well, there's just a lot of it happening for some reason. Mm-hmm. And usually it's moms. I mean, I know dads do it as well, but majority are moms who do it. And I'm going to explain to you guys how moms do it.
Okay.
All right. So that'll be next week's topic.
Okay. So thanks for joining us today. Yeah. See you next week with the Relationship Show and Diane Valleycat. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments below and Diane, I'll answer them for you.
I will.